It's Sunday, and that means it is time for the Mio on MMA podcast with me, Mio, your host, and I guess in a nutshell, analyst, opinion based podcasting. And we're talking about the UFC fight card that happened last night, the UFC Orlando or UFC Wonderboy versus Holland. I have tried a little bit of a change with the settings on the microphone. So the goal is that hopefully this will be a little bit louder because I've been listening to my podcast, obviously. More in the podcast format. The YouTube format seems to be fine. But on the podcast format, there are points where the volume gets a little bit low for my tastes. And it's hard to hear. The general volume was fine. But there would be low points. Probably when my voice just generally goes a little bit lower. Or when I tend to move a fair bit when I talk, so it could be just my head being a little bit awkwardly angled in relation to the mic. So hopefully this is a little bit better. What do we got today? Like I said, is the Wonderboy versus Kevin Holland card, which the main event, I don't want to say saved, because the card was perfectly fine before the main event. We had a good fight between RDA and Barberena. Nicolau versus Schnell was better than I expected, but at the same time had some of the flaws I expected. Sergey Pavlovich had a hell of a performance. We had a bizarre and kind of awesome finish from Roman Dolidze. We had a better than expected fight between Anders and Daukaus. And Rowe versus Price was pretty good. That was the main card. So it was pretty good, but the main event elevated this card because the main event was, phenomenal. A great display of ego over fight IQ. I want to be clear on that. There will be elements of Kevin Holland's performance that I am going to drop a giant deuce on. but it was a fantastic fight and worth going out of your way to watch. When I'm done with that, I'm going to talk about the one on Prime card because I think we need to touch base on it. The reason I'm putting it at the end is, I don't know, maybe some of you are still debating whether you want to watch the one on Prime card. I don't see why you wouldn't. And this is the thing, is I think that encouraging, even though I said this, I have massive problems with ONE FC in terms of business model and in terms about the honesty that they display, specifically Chatri Sityodtong when he's talking about the business of the company. There are massive, massive problems there. There are problems with, frankly, fight integrity with how the matchmaking works, how Sityodtong can, in his own words, probably overwrite any rule or result as needed. And then there's the hydration stuff, which the promotion itself is in charge of. And here's the thing. And I talked about this with USADA when I talked about Conor McGregor. When an aspect of rule enforcement is up to the promotion and controlled by the promotion, you do not have fairness. I'm not saying that they do mess up with it, but you have a conflict of interest that could lead to problems. But most of us have Prime TV. Most of us do, because most of us have Amazon Prime. Most of us do. We make use of that service. We get the TV package. You might as well watch it and see. And kind of encourage, again, a competitive environment for the MMA fighters. Before I get into the fight card, I do want to talk about the James Krause stuff. Now, I have nothing new in terms of facts for the James Krause stuff, so if you're hoping for that, I don't have it. But of course, this fight card was excluded from betting in Ontario and Alberta as a direct result of specifically the Derek Minner versus Shaolin Nurenbeke fight and James Krause's fighters and gambling. I would also say TJ Dillashaw should actually be included on this, and even Ilar Latifi, who did not disclose a staph infection before his fight with Alexei Olenek, because the medical process really should have more value in the UFC and MMA in general if you're going to be taking bets. Because think about for a moment. I have my in my Google Chrome right now, I have my fantasy basketball team, right? Okay, I have a game time decision beside Tyrese Halliburton because he has, what's the injury? He has left sore groinness. Not even a tear, not even like a big injury, but that's the type of thing that other sports provide. And in MMA, apparently, you can get around the physicals by just not saying anything about the fact that your shoulder is falling out of its socket. So there's obviously going to be a big question mark going forward about betting and MMA, and the Dillashaw fight was part of that, and the James Krause thing is part of that. To summarize what Krause is accused of, with the prominent example, essentially he's accused of insider trading, using information that he learns from his role as head coach and owner of Glory MMA and Fitness, and possibly even through the grapevine with other coaches and fighters. What is going on? What is going to impact the fight that's at hand, and how the betting line is probably wrong, and how to make money off of it. And there's also like just some general, like, he's a coach, he's trying to break down what's going to happen in a fight. Like there is that. But the UFC has a code of conduct that states that coaches are not allowed to participate in MMA gambling, similar to other sports. And he has a YouTube channel, or he had a YouTube channel, he had a Discord channel. There is the possibility that he was even sock puppeting betting accounts for a fee. And all of this is, one, probably not legal, and two, definitely a conflict of interest. And the head of this came up with the Minner fight because he coaches Derek Minner. Derek Minner had a leg injury going into the fight, specifically knee injury. I don't think we've ever gotten anything more specific. Against Shaolin Nurenbeke. And Nurenbeke went from a minus 200 something favorite to a minus 400 something favorite. And the line jumped to favor him by first round stoppage. Nurenbeke is not really a finisher. I could be wrong, but I believe it is specifically stated that he has no finishes in the UFC before this. Now, I would also like to say something. Derek Minner is a very finishable guy. Just because he is incredibly aggressive, incredibly risk-taking. But, yeah, Nurenbeke, decision on Brown, decision on Soriano, has a couple of finishes on the Chinese scene, but not against anyone particularly good. He's also a guy who has a bunch of losses. He's 40-10. He's got 10 losses, which is uncommon in the UFC to see double-digit losses. Although, interestingly enough, he has a fight against Alexei Olenek. Okay, it's a different Olenek. Okay. That was horrifying me for a moment. Anyways, back on topic. So you had a known non-finisher suddenly being heavily favored by first-round stoppage, moving up minus 200 or so odds to win. And the gambling watchdog community was on alert for this. And then the fight comes around. Minner comes out, throws 2 super hard kicks. Knee pretty much falls apart. He gets stopped. Now, I said Minner is not known for his fight IQ or his risk-adverse nature. So you'd be like, well, I mean, a guy like that would probably still throw kicks with a damaged leg, right? Except he's not really a kicker. Like, you can go back and watch Derek Minner's other UFC fights, and there's barely any kicking. He's a aggressive, pursue the takedown, look for a submission, specifically a bunch of chokes, kind of guy. And that gets him into trouble with getting ground and pounded or submitted himself. He's not a guy who comes out and is just like, I'm going to throw naked kicks and get knocked out. Like, that's not how he loses. He's a guy with 14 career losses. And let's see here. Ground and pound, decision, rear naked choke against Grant Dawson, triangle choke against Herbert Burns, elbows on the ground from Kevin Kroom, armbar, triangle armbar, decision loss to Chico Camus, Bravo choke to Jesse Arnett, ground and pound on the ground by Luke Saunders, armbar by John Duvall, triangle choke by Chad Openmiller, and a submission loss of undetermined nature against Dominic Blanco. Again, a lot of submission losses. This is not a guy who kicks. He's not a guy who takes that kind of risk. Minner's been cut. Krause has been suspended from any involvement in the UFC basically at this point. And his fighters, although it should be mentioned, there is a fighter coming up that is out of his gym that has been allowed to remain on the card, whose name is eluding me right this second. But there's someone who was granted special dispensation to fight out of Glory because it would be unfair, manifestly unfair for him to fight out of another gym on such short notice. But what I'm really trying to get to here is there are fighters, specifically Jeff Molina, Brandon Moreno, who have both stated that they are not leaving, that they are going to stay with James Krause, that they support their coach. And part of me does want to say like that loyalty is respectable. But if any James Krause fighter, any Glory MMA and fitness fighter listens to this podcast, here's the thing. Your coach has bet on one of your teammates to lose. Almost as a sure thing. And came up with a game plan that emphasized an injury and a skill set that fighter doesn't usually put on. 2, and this is me just general, I've never understood the Glory MMA and fitness appeal. This is a gym that has not produced a UFC champion, has not produced a UFC ranked fighter particularly, unless it's possible that Grant Dawson, during his time with them, was a ranked fighter. And I mean, Tim Elliott's a ranked fighter, but like that's flyweight. Which is ridiculous. So, like, in a division with a proper depth, they maybe had Grant Dawson. And I want to say this, Grant Dawson has gotten notably better since leaving Glory MMA and Fitness. Otherwise, we're talking about Cole Smith. We're talking about Derek Minner. We're talking about Trey Ogden, Jason Witt, James Krause himself. These are the fighters that this gym has produced. And like Megan Anderson also was there, but like I think any problems with Megan Anderson are just like Megan Anderson, and any strengths of Megan Anderson are just Megan Anderson. Like Megan Anderson is a product of her own self. It's not the fault of coaching her shortcomings, and it's not the credit of coaching for her achievements, in my opinion. And their best fighter is Brandon Moreno. Now, everyone's using Brandon Moreno as the example. Oh, they coached Moreno to a championship. I think you're forgetting that Moreno's association with James Krause and the team began in 2022. I believe he has done 2 full camps with them. The loss to Davidson Figueiredo, which is no shame. Davidson Figueiredo is a great fighter. And the victory over Kai Kara-France. Kai Kara-France is a fighter that he beat while he was still with Entrim back in 2019. And Figueiredo is a fighter that obviously he has a win and a draw against as well, without Krause. So what is the high-level appeal? What is the S-tier campness of Glory and MMA and Fitness that would make this whole thing worth it? Don't get me wrong, they're the best gym in Missouri, in that Midwest area with Kansas and Nebraska and Illinois and all of that. So if you're from there, I always got it. But I said this way back when Moreno elected to go with them instead of Team Elevation was a team he was working with as well, where he made that pick. I don't know, maybe Elevation didn't fit him, whatever. I think Team Elevation is a way better gym. And I never really saw Glory transform a fighter, make them into something notably better or whatever. They just kind of were good. And then like I said, Grant Dawson is the Glory fighter who left Glory and has had his best performances post being in Glory. I would say if you look at Grant Dawson, I believe his last 2 fights have been with the new gym. He's with ATT now. his fights with Mark Madsen and Jared Gordon, I believe, are the fights he's had with the gym. Those are the fights where he looks really impressive. Because before that, it was beating Derek Minner. We've been through that. Beating Julian Erosa, the quadruple A fighter. Beating Mike Trizano, who has been incredibly mixed in the UFC. Beating Nadine Narmani. And beating an old man, Leandro Santos. By the way, not being able to finish Erosa or Nadine Narmani. And going to a draw with Ricky Glenn. That was his glory achievements. Since leaving glory, rear naked choke against Jared Gordon. Rear naked choke. Dominant display against Mark Madsen. So, I don't know. The gym doesn't seem very good and seems to have a lot of baggage to it. Let's get into the UFC fight night here. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Kevin Holland. First round comes out, and essentially we have Holland dictating the pace, throwing a little bit more, having the volume, aggressively cutting the cage off, pushing Wonderboy around. This was the round that he won, but Wonderboy was landing stirrup counters. He was landing some interesting kicks. He had this head kick in the first round that just missed. And it was amazing. It's a good round. It's everything you want to see. It's Wonderboy getting in trouble, Wonderboy taking damage, but also finding solutions, but losing. The second, the third, and the fourth round, these are all Wonderboy, and particularly the fourth round is an execution. Round 2 and round 3 are close enough, but they're a case where like Holland no longer had the volume. If we pull up UFC stats here for this card, I should have had this up already. My apologies. What I'm getting at is we're going to note that the volume in rounds 2, 3, and 4 get like very, very close. So Holland's advantage in the first round doesn't last. Yeah, here we go. It went from 49-34 to Wonderboy outlanding him 38-33, 43-24, and then 48-12. So that's 6 strikes. Total strikes is about the same feel. And working some lovely kicks, the spin kicks, the switch kicks. Honestly, it was Wonderboy doing his thing. And every time it went to the ground, Holland did not try to keep it there. He really didn't try to bring it to the ground the 2, maybe 3 times it actually hit the ground. It was just kind of like a smash up in the clinch and they kind of bundle over type of thing. Like not either guy really trying to take it to the ground, just we kind of ended up here. And Derek Brunson put it kind of perfectly. Kevin Holland is the guy who's going to try to have a strict kickboxing match with a guy who's 50-0 in kickboxing. Wonderboy looked like his old self. Like for a 39-year-old guy, he did not look that problematic. He actually fought the clinch pretty well. Like even the attempts Holland did make to make it dirty, because Holland did force some clinches to try to work some shots to the body, to try to work some dirty boxing. Holland or Thompson handled it very well. I think that this is a fantastic retro throwback performance for Wonderboy, where he looks great and just absolutely starts demolishing him in the fourth round. We're talking spinning wheel kicks. We're talking having Holland out on his feet at various points, significantly hurting him with a body shot. They did call it a low blow, even though it looked like Dan Mergliata was waving the fight off. But eventually, apparently, it was a low blow. And I don't know. It was pretty on the belt line. I don't think it really should have been a low blow. But I also don't know what the specific details of like what the zone is per commission, because I know it does actually vary. For example, the Illinois commission has a horrifying idea of what low blows are. And I'll just leave that there. This was fantastic. Holland is a dumb fighter, but my God, was it entertaining. That's kind of like that's I guess the dichotomy I'm facing here, is that this in no way means Wonderboy is like still a top fighter, because Holland went out there and gave Wonderboy the exact fight he wanted. It really wasn't until he got seriously hurt in the fourth round that he started trying to really make this a dirty fight, trying to make this a predominantly clinch fight, or really work any kind of takedown game. Like, he went for a takedown after he got, like, wilted with a body kick. And that was about it. So, I don't know what it means. I don't actually know what it means. Other than, I guess, what I want is I don't really want Wonderboy to be kind of in the structure of the welterweight division. I don't really want to see him face the young up-and-comers because the Gilbert Burns fight and even the Bilal Muhammad fight were really, really scary moments where a fighter who is interested in winning predominantly probably can still make him look exceptionally bad. But Holland was the perfect one. And in that regard, I've got him versus George Masvidal dos lined up. And for Holland, he probably needs to take some time off and just like heal, because like his right hand was messed up, apparently from the first round onwards. And on top of that, can we not interview guys who have taken that hellacious beating? Like the UFC, or I suppose technically speaking, it's Joe Rogan, and it wasn't Rogan doing the interview, so I can't blame him. But there's been this weird, I don't know, public flirtation with like not interviewing guys who have just been knocked out. And I know that this was a technically corner stoppage. The fourth round did end up getting called either by the doctor or by the referee or by the corner on the stool. But why do we interview guys after that? Why? I don't understand. There was a couple of sad moments on this card. There were also some touching tributes. This is their tribute show to, I am blanking on his name. The journalist guy. Oh, I feel really bad. I'll put it in the description below, or to the side, to the up, wherever you happen to be reading the description here. But it was he died of cancer. He was a massive proponent of MMA in sports journalism, trained it even while suffering from battling through cancer. And honestly, I feel terrible about not remembering his name. Seriously. And they also had a touching tribute to Elias Theodorou. Although it's always a bit weird because like they put his parents on camera and his business partner, and I don't really know if like they looked very uncomfortable, and it almost always looks very uncomfortable when you do that. So I don't know if you should do that, but there's that. The undercard, by the way, was at a breakneck pace. Clearly, they scheduled too many fights for the time they had, because it was like, no, we can't even really give Scott Holtzman a send-off for his retirement fight. Co-main event, Rafael dos Anjos versus Brian Barberena. Not a lot to talk about here. RDA got him to the ground in the first round, was working for an arm triangle. Didn't get it, mostly because he was on the wrong side. Like, he was between the cage and Barberena, and it's hard to finish the arm triangle from there. But he, dominated. He realized that he wasn't going to get it, returned to mount position, and kind of just put Barberena on the, you're going to survive this round and really not achieve much else. Second round, Barberena gets taken down again. Fought the takedown well. He really didn't accept bottom position. But, RDA is a really good wrestler if you just can't physically shut down his takedowns. And I didn't think Barberena could. And he couldn't. And eventually we end up with RDA getting the back, getting the choke out, and calling out Conor McGregor. And I don't see why you wouldn't do that fight, to be honest. It has high enough profile. It does have a chance for Conor to win because, it's not like RDA is still in his prime. He has shown visible signs of slowing down. But it's also a difficult fight for Conor. And it's one that a win would actually restore his legitimacy. So this is like, I'm not even advocating for this booking to see Conor lose, because to be honest, I would go a very different direction if I just wanted to see Conor lose. But it makes a lot of sense. And there's a story there because they were supposed to fight. RDA got hurt. And that was how we got the Diaz versus Conor 1 fight. So I would be a big fan. And for Barberena, I don't really know what to do. This fight didn't really further the idea that he's just done, because obviously didn't get knocked out for one thing. for another thing. Well, I mean, that's really about it. Like, he didn't get knocked out. He didn't get seriously hurt, which is new for him. But he was also pretty much stomped into the ground. So I don't know what you really do with him. I penciled in Gabe Green because I think that would be a reasonably fun fight. So there you go. But they've also been using kind of like as a they've kind of been using him as like the B side for the retirement stuff. Or not necessarily the retirement stuff, but the senior circuit, so to speak. You know, the Robbie Lawlers, RDA here, etc. Matthias Nicolau versus Matt Schnell. Part of why I was not looking forward to this fight. Now, here's the thing. Here's the weird thing. This fight was pretty good, and I knew it was going to be pretty good. It's just that I think if you put Matt Schnell in there with someone else, it's a better fight. And if you put Matthias Nicolau in there with someone else, it's a more question-asking fight. There were just way better uses of both of these fighters. Nicolau did his thing. He counterpunches very well. He's defensively sound. He'll keep on his bike. And yeah, outside of being pretty good about making Nicolau pay a little bit for low kicks, I don't really think anything really went well for Schnell. He got dropped with an overhand. He ate a few elbows before Nicolau backed off in the first round. Easy 10-9. In the second round, Nicolau stuns Schnell and then hits like the most untechnical takedown ever by just like kind of flinging him to the mat. There was a quick armbar attempt by Schnell. Nicolau's like, back off, sting him again, and then boom, flatlined him, GMP finish. Nicolau wins in the second round. Not really sure it does much for him other than giving him like a cool highlight finish, but like Matt Schnell has been finished before and has been hurt a number of times. This is also where we got the Theodorou tribute. RIP. And again, condolences to one of, by all accounts, the good guys of the sport, Elias Theodorou's family and friends. I met him very briefly, so I can't give like a personal story, but seemed like a ridiculously cool dude. What's next? I've got Matthias Nicolau versus Brandon Royval, because it's a fight that asks sort of the same questions as this one. How do you deal with someone who's going to throw a lot of volume and perhaps turn the pace up on you without the lack of chin? Because Royval has his own durability problems, particularly in the shoulder area, but does not have the same durability issues upstairs that Schnell does. And for Matt Schnell, I know he's already fought Tim Elliott, but it was on tough. I want them full camp going at it. Of course, this would involve Tim Elliott getting away from glory in MMA fitness, and being that Tim Elliott is a dirty, dirty fighter, he might not do that. But that's the fight I do want. Tai Tuivasa got smashed by Sergey Pavlovich, and I don't really have anything else to say about that. That was domination. I've got Pavlovich against Alexander Volkov, who's kind of like a guardian to the top area. And Tuivasa should take some time off. He was hurt pretty badly by Gone. He was hurt pretty badly in this fight as well. So let him have a good long rest and provide him with some cash to do that. Because like my new thing is not even like that MMA fighters need more money. It's they need some like consistent cash flow. There should be some kind of like DL stipping. I don't know. Jack Hermansson versus Roman Dolidze. The first round, I don't have much to say. Like, Hermansson had a takedown there. There was a guillotine attempt by Dolidze. There was a cool scramble off of an armbar attempt by Dolidze. It's cool. It's fine. It's interesting that Dolidze came out as a southpaw, knowing that Hermansson has historical problems about that, although I don't think that really played a role in the fight. Round 2, Hermansson's poking at Dolidze, doing his thing. Dolidze being super low volume and not really doing a lot, which is a staple of his. Takedown by Jack. Dolidze goes for like the same sort of armbar / sweep idea. Ends up with a calf slicer in the scramble. Takes back control. Applies a rear naked choke for a little bit. And then just starts bombing on him like, flatten him out, bomb on him while still having the calf slicer. It was pretty sick. It was pretty cool. And Delitzé got the big win. Called out Khamzat Chimaev afterwards. That's not happening. I don't know. I'm coming around to Delitzé in the cage. Where, like, he's doing some kind of cool stuff. But, like, there's also still all kinds of... This guy is just not a good dude coming out of the whole thing. Maybe he's completely lovely, and the gym stories and the whole thing with Cheyenne Velismus are whatever. They're misunderstandings. They're blown out of proportion. Whatever. I don't know. But there's a lot of smoke there. And it does make it really hard to cheer for the guy. Even though I picked him to win this fight. How about Derek Brunson for him next? Brunson was supposed to fight Hermansson. It's a fight that, again, I do still kind of wonder what happens if Delitzé is forced to employ a game where he doesn't have physical strength edges kind of at will. And Brunson being a super strong wrestler, still a really good athlete, albeit a fading one, could be a fun option. And for Hermansson, I've got Brendan Allen. I'm starting to gain confidence after the Yatko fight that Allen is actually a really top-notch grappler. Let's see what happens. Hermansson's kind of like the next step on that with more physicality, probably a little bit better grappling, and definitively a better striker. So let's see that fight. Eric Anders, Kyle Daukaus. This was a sad fight because Daukaus was doing okay until the clash of heads. There was a big clash of heads in the first round. And it was clear that, like, Daukaus had a broken orbital after the Delitzé fight. And the headbutt, I think, clearly... Well, the clash of heads. It was a 50-50. It was a non-fault clash of heads. But the clash of heads really compromised him. He was pawing at his face. His nose was clearly messed up. And eventually he got TKO'd in the second round. Nothing about this actually installs faith in Anders. Like, honestly, nothing. Like, you'd be like, well, you didn't pick Anders to win. You picked Daukaus to win. He beat a guy that you thought was going to beat him. He beat a guy because I think Daukaus needs a lot of time off to properly heal and mentally get into a good place. Because right now he's kind of like the Josh Koscheck post-GSP mentality. He's worried about getting hit. He's timid in a way that he wasn't before. He reacts poorly to getting hit in a way that he did not before. And it's possible he'll never regain what he had, and in which case he does need to retire. Because, like, the thing is when you're Kyle Daukaus and you're not a top flight athlete, not an amazing athlete, there's nothing outside of being a relatively tall dude. There's nothing really physically outstanding about him. He's a guy who gets by on, like, toughness, brawling, and hard-nosed persistence. That wasn't there in this fight. I don't think it was there from the start, but it definitely wasn't there from the point where he got hurt onwards. So it doesn't mean anything. Anders did the stupid thing that I dislike, where you knock a guy down, he's hurt, and you stand over him and kick his legs. I don't necessarily have a problem with the stand over a guy and kick his legs thing. Like, I honestly don't. If someone's, like, just dropping into guard, Ryan Hall style, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to belt you, I don't know, 5-6 times in the legs to make, slowly make this not a desirable position for you, to turn it into some kind of offense for myself. Cool. But he had Daukaus really badly hurt, didn't follow him for the longest time, and eventually stopped. Like, all of my concerns are still there. And he also completely squandered it by calling out Jamie Pickett for a fight. That is an incredibly uninteresting fight. Jamie Pickett is a guy who has reasonable physicality, but badly lost to Daukus, who you just beat, and also is a guy who is never going to beat or really even test a guy who has physicality. And people know that. Like, that's the thing. People know that. There's no shine to take from Pickett. Come on. I don't know who I would put him up against. I penciled in Armin Petrosian because I have nothing. But that was a terrible call. Nico Price against Philip Rowe. Price started well in the first round, but like the problem was very much there. Like very early in this fight, it looked like Rowe was much too quick for him to really sustain offense against. It was just like in the first round, Rowe was a little too cocky, a little too showboating, a little bit too low in terms of output. I should kind of want to go look at the output now in this fight. Yeah, Price had way more output. He landed 110 six strikes to 63. Yeah, it was 34-20. And then even in the second round, he still landed more. But like at no point did it feel like Price was comfortably in control, I guess, in a nutshell. And the most interesting thing here was there was some equipment issues in this fight. Philip Rowe had to adjust his cup, and Nico Price had to adjust his mouthpiece. Bit weird. Anyways, third round, Price hurts Rowe, swarms. Kind of gasses himself out, and gets finished. I'm not left with a tremendous... Again, it's a case where I'm not left with a lot of more faith in Philip Rowe. Like, there are good things about Philip Rowe. Like, there's physicality to him. Obviously, he's huge. He's fast. He's a good athlete. There are all the required benchmarks to make a decent fighter out of him. So don't get me wrong on that. But I still think he throws at a low pace. I still think he's too used to being a massive bully. And I think Price looked just slow, a little bit flat. He's coming off of, I think, double knee surgery. So I don't know. It's a good win. It's a name on the resume. It brings him higher up. But I still really have a hard time picking Rowe under any kind of physical parity down the road. He hasn't developed the required game, gumption, put togetherness. There you go. Scrappiness. That's another word. But he is remarkably calm under pressure and has remarkable physical gifts. So like he will beat people. And has a really, really high ceiling. He just needs to develop. I've got him against Max Griffin. That would be like some level of physical parity. What happens? And for Price, I've got him against Andre Fiallo. It's a fun fight between two fighters that I think are a little bit lost right now. Angela Hill worked Emily Ducote, and that's really all I can say. I guess I can give you the 6 strike numbers on this one because it was high. Hill landed 182 of them. 50-24, 67-16, and 65-34. Ducote never got out of first gear. No, honestly, never got out of park. I don't know how else to put it. Like, she just never got going. She kind of let Hill do what she wanted. Like, in the first round, she had some good defense. She, like, largely shut down the power hand of Hill. Like, it was all lead hand and, like, kind of, some chipping away kicks and everything. But you're getting outlanded 2-1. You need to, at some point, throw. You need to, at some point, counter. You need to, at some point, establish something. And she just never did. This was more lopsided than I thought it was going to be. I don't know. I still don't know what to make of Ducote. She's still training, as far as I know, at American Top Team Oklahoma City. Please move to a better camp. I don't know. I've never been impressed with Ducote. People keep trying to get me impressed with Ducote, and it just doesn't happen. Angela Hill versus Mackenzie Dern would be like a kind of high-profile fight. Winnable for Dern because Hill does give up the clinch a lot. Tries to weaponize it. She's pretty good at that. And Dern needs a win. But it's also a winnable fight for Hill. And it's a fight that if Dern wins, it does still actually mean something. And I think there would be crowd interest. and Ducote versus the winner of Cheyenne Vlismus and Corey McKenna, because she's still kind of above those girls. Clay Guida beat Scott Holtzman, essentially just volume and movement and aggression. And I knew I wouldn't love this fight. I didn't. One judge did score it for Holtzman. He was fine. I assume this is his retirement fight. They didn't really give him any time to do that. But I don't know. Moving on to the fight that annoyed the crap out of me. Michael Johnson, Mark Jacasey. What were you doing, Mark Jacasey? I scored all 3 rounds for Michael Johnson. Kind of like the Wonderboy Holland fight. I legitimately... Oh, by the way, Clay Guida versus Mark Jacasey was my next fight that I put up. And obviously, I'm assuming Holtzman retired. It was a vintage performance. It was turning back the clock, looking comfortable on the feet, striking. But it was against a guy who didn't fight. Jacasey threw flashy stuff. He taunted. He channeled the worst aspects of Philip Rowe and Kevin Holland in this fight, and he lost. Didn't really try to wrestle a lot. Like, there was a little bit, but like, you go into a fight with Michael Johnson and you don't wrestle too much. And the commentary, by the way, was still obsessed. They were no longer surprised when Jacasey went for a takedown. But they're still obsessed with the idea that Jacasey is primarily a creative kickboxer. Creative, maybe. But he is not a good striker. He is a just physical wrestler. Avoid this fight. Unless you're like a really big Michael Johnson fan, or you really, really need to be convinced that Mark Jacasey has serious problems as a striker. Darren Elkins got mauled by Jonathan Pierce. I don't have much more to say. Pierce versus Nurenbeke, and Darren Elkins versus Bill Algeo, just because Algeo's a guy that Elkins can probably take down, have some fun scrambles with. He's still fun to watch grapple, but he is not. He's never been fun to watch strike. And at this point, he's just taking ridiculous amounts of damage. So that's it. Gennaro Valdez versus Natan Levy was not as good as I expected, to be honest, but it was very, very good. Valdez came out like more measured pace here, less aggressive, but Levy was like throwing like the spin kicks and stunning him a lot, but like at the same time showing all of his shortcomings as a boxer, getting overwhelmed in combinations. He had the most awkward stunning of Valdez. I think it was in the first round where he's just running backwards, completely off balance, and Valdez is chasing him, and he still somehow cracks him with a punch, 1 foot off the ground, and drops him down. And it was fun, low level MMA. Like, 2 guys who have a couple of things that they do actually well, and a couple of physical things that really can be built on, but are crap shows as fighters. So very much. Valdez got knocked down a couple of times. I did think he won the second round. I thought he pressured it. He thought he brought it. What were the numbers, I guess? This would be another fight to like just consult the numbers here. Supposedly there was only like 126 strikes landed. Interesting. Anyways, 34-19 for Levy, 21-13 for Valdez, 20-9 for Levy. Yep. Levy takes the first and the third. He got all 3 on one judge's scorecard. I don't actually think it's a bad card. I do disagree with it a little bit, but I get it. Levy versus Mason Jones feels about appropriate. Feels about a time to give him some like proper test. And for Valdez, he's not going to be long for this company. Because to be honest, I don't know if he can even win a fight in the UFC. Because he tried to not be a madman here. He tried to fight like more conservative for a 3-round fight, and just was not good enough. And Levy's pretty low down. Like, Levy is not a top-notch lightweight. He's not a guy I have any like long-term hopes for. But I don't know, maybe Daniel Zellhuber, who desperately needs a comeback fight. Francis Marshall, Marcelo Rojo. The fight was essentially Rojo getting pressured, getting taken down. He did fight the takedowns off well, but he also got warned for like cage grabs. I think he had a low blow. I just have groin hit written down here. I forget if he groin hit or if it was Marshall who hit him. Doesn't really matter. Marshall eventually dropped him with a big right hook and finished him off. Put him up against Steve Garcia. Rojo gets cut. I still have all of my reservations about Marshall that I said in my preview. This kid is headed for a knockout loss at some point. And I don't even mean like in the sense of like everybody probably at some point is headed for a knockout loss. I mean that there is like some significant fundamental problems with his defense and his hitability that will at some point be exposed. It just was not this fight. Hasman Howergy got dropped early and then put it on. Nunez had some good, interesting counters and so on, but like Howergy did knock her down in the second round, pressured her pretty well. Nunez did not hang on to pressure very well. Like she would be skittish and she would be backing off and never really standing her ground. Like that's the thing is like you have a good counter game. Please just once set the feet, put the power in and go bam. And it never really happened. Never really happened. Kind of in the first round, like that early drop, yes. But after that, not really again. And eventually she just got TKO'd on the ground. She looks lost on her back. She's 0-3, but I still want to see her because she's kind of like, I guess, the Argentinian girl with the big boobs. Everyone was so annoyed when she got cut. And now I can't remember her name. Because there is a creepy level to this fandom. Is the answer to that question. Hey, this I can actually easily look up. Straw weights. Rankings, please. It's Juarez, I think, is the last name. Yeah, Silvana Gomez Juarez. That's who I'm thinking of. She's kind of like that, but actually like a better striker. Like with Silvana Gomez Juarez, it's just that she has like a reasonably high level of physicality and hits hard. With Nunez, like there's actually a pretty good striking game there. Like she's a worthwhile addition to this division, but at 0-3, I could also see her just getting the boot. For Howergy, why not a fight with Pauliana Viana? Viana is someone who has a little bit of heat right now, has done a good job of marketing herself, and is on a little bit of a run. Like a little bit of a promising run. So put them together and let's see what happens. I still have questions about Howergy. I am left with a much better opinion of her, though. There's toughness. There's recoverability to her game. There's something more than like just volume. She actually can punish pretty well. She is very open to counters still. So there are still some gaps. And apparently she actually has a pretty decent ground game and like a good killer instinct. She was a little bit reckless on the ground, but like Nunez does not have a submission game. So fair. Hopefully that was just kind of like disrespecting the opponent as opposed to what she's going to do against somebody who can actually grapple. So I put her against, Nunez against Jasmine Lucindo. Might as well do the other Jasmine fight. And that is it for the card. Let's talk about one real quick. If you have not watched the one on Prime Card 5 and you don't want spoilers, now is your time to turn the podcast off. But, it was a couple of days ago, and you should check it out. Now, let's get to the big things. Number one, obviously, Roberto Soldier getting punched in the balls by Merab Ramazanov kind of killed the momentum of that fight. It was just kind of like, it was a takedown shot, and then a groin shot, and then the fight ends in a no contest. So, obviously, that that sucks all kinds of fun out of the card. Obviously, because that was a fight that everyone was looking forward to. Soldic is their big ticket. Ty Rotolo versus Murat Gafarov was pretty good in the grappling side of things. Cade Rotolo's fight, a little less so. Like, interesting, don't get me wrong, in an intricate chess match kind of way with Mathieu Gabriel. But I don't know. It's probably not going to win you over if you weren't already a fan. And in the Muay Thai section, Jackie Bouton versus Amber Kitchen was pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. And on the MMA side of things, Anatoly Malkin destroyed Guillaume de Ritter. Or Reiner de Ritter. Sorry. Who is Guillaume de Ritter? Oh, he's a rallycross driver. That's what it is. I know someone named semi-famous named Guillaume de Ritter. Reiner de Ritter. RDR really just got kind of, well, exactly what you would think with a guy who kind of wasn't really sold as a physical threat at middleweight, taking on a guy who was a physical threat at heavyweight. He couldn't take him down. Every time they clinched, Malkin was the one to dominate, and he just kept absolutely blasting him until he destroyed him in 4 minutes and 35 seconds. And I'm really interested in seeing more from Malkin. I'm still really interested in seeing de Ritter fight as well. I'm just not that interested in seeing him fight out of his weight class. Get this guy some middleweights to fight, and it'll probably be awesome. Talked about the Bouton fight, talked about the Rotolo fights. Loan Tianis was my lone loss on the card. He beat Daesung Park. Daesung Park, pardon me. Crazy Dog, I think is his nickname. I'm still not a big believer in Tianis. Like, dude's got a good back game, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of like fundamental physicality to him and like grappling, but I don't know. I still don't think things flow together all that well. And I think, unfortunately for Park, it was just kind of like he tied up with him the first time in the clinch, got his back taken, and became exceptionally nervous from that point onwards. There were timidity warnings even put into play. So I don't think it really rises the stock of Tianis, and it does kill Park's stock a fair bit. Edson Marquez knocked out Edward Folayang. I expected that. Folayang he's just old. He's just old at this point. That's all it is. Dude is a legitimate pioneer and like a huge part of the Filipino MMA scene, but it's probably time to move on. Umar Khan, who I forgot Rugrug was on this card and didn't break down this fight. It went exactly how I would have broke it down. Rugrug is good for a couple of explosive takedowns, maybe 2 or 3. Then he gets tired, but it's heavyweight, so he can probably still out-wrestle people. He's really physical. They talked about how he needs to, like, improve his stand-up and whatever. I don't even think he needs to improve his stand-up. Like it would be a good idea, but, like, honestly, here's what he needs to improve. Just don't gas. Like, he has the type of physicality in wrestling that if he can keep it going for 15 minutes, he's actually going to win a lot of fights at heavyweight. And that's kind of really all there is to it. But the fight that was really enjoyable was Denise Zamboanga versus Hsien Lin. I was a little bit disappointed by Hsien Lin not implementing the leg kicks quite as well as I was hoping, utilizing the range quite as well. But Zamboanga looked very much improved. I've always thought she looks a little reckless, a little rough, a little bit berserking Viking from Valhalla in terms of almost wanting to die on her shield. And that was calmed down a little bit here, but like without a loss of aggression or effectiveness. So it's good. Honestly, like I enjoy watching this girl fight. It's fantastic. And if she's going to keep getting better, sky's the limit. By the way, women's atomweight, because this is essentially what this is, worth watching. And obviously the highlight of any card not the UFC because the UFC doesn't have an atomweight division. They have atomweights, Tabitha Ricci, Tisha Torres, etc., but they're fighting up a weight class, Lumalu Bumi. It's kind of why I honestly would like to see like a promotion really, really, really try to like collect them in one place and do it. Like Invicta would be the best bet. And Invicta's got some good ones. Obviously, Julie DeCourcy and Alicia Zappatella. And why am I blanking on the girl that literally just got beat by DeCourcy and probably actually is maybe the best of the bunch? Jessica Del Boni. There you go. I kind of love it like if Ryzen and One and Invicta and other promotions got together and had like an Atomweight World Grand Prix. That would be really, really cool. Anyways, that was the one card. It wasn't especially amazing. The main event, well, the co-main event got kind of compromised. The MMA co-main event, the Soldich fight. And the main event was pretty one-sided. But hey, if you're interested in seeing what's up with Anatoly Malkin, go for it. That's cool. And if you're up to get a little bit familiar with Denise Zamboanga and his Shenlin, that's a fight to check out as well. And if you're down for grappling and that's your kind of chess game thing, check out the Rotolo Brothers fight. There you go. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Well, not see, but breaking down the next UFC pay-per-view. UFC, I want to say it's 282. Yes, it is. I might talk about the Bellator card. But I'm not looking forward to it. I look at this card. I'm not super interested in Danny Sabatello versus Rufian Stotts. Don't get me wrong. They've done a good job of like selling it with like trash talk and stuff. And Rufian Stotts is a good fight promoter. But I know what Sabatello is going to try to do. I know what happens if he fails. I know what happens if he succeeds. That kind of leaves it as not a great fight. Not super interested in the rematch between Juliana Velasquez and Liz Carmouche. Not super interested in Magomed Magomedov versus Patchy Mix. And then the rest of the card is typical filler. Although Randy Fields is on the card. Or Field is on the card. I like her. And, okay, Denise Kyle Kielholtz is on the card earlier on. Kyle Crutchmer is an interesting prospect. So there's some stuff, but like there's nothing super interesting there. And then on UFC 282, obviously I was looking forward to this when it was the Yuri Prohaska Glover Share rematch. I am not really looking forward to it with it being Blachowicz and Ankalaev with a co-main event of Pappy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. But hey, there's still some interesting stuff there. Bryce Milic, Ilya Topuria, Dricus Duplessis, Darren Till, Billy Quarantillo, Alexander Hernandez, also kind of cool. Hernandez is going down to featherweight. I thought Quarantillo was going up. Okay. That's interesting. I don't think going down in weight actually solves anything for Hernandez, but it does add a wrinkle. And Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. There you go. I will see you guys then. As per usual, above, below, to the side, to the right, to the left, there is somewhere a Linktree link, a Discord link, Twitter, all that good stuff. Check it out. On the Discord, we are going to be doing a Christmas Pride show, Pride MMA show, Pride rules, and it'll be the ability to call out anyone you want. And we'll be giving first dibs to the newest people because they're the ones with the most to prove and the most new fights. So, hey, check that out. It's a great time to join the Discord in that regard. So, that's it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.